Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the GCSAA Podcast, presented in partnership with Envu. I'm Scott Hollister, the editor-in-chief of GCSAA's Golf Course Management Magazine, and your host for this episode, and we're pleased to have you along for the ride for episode 61. Today, we welcome Jason Sfire as our guest on this episode. But before I tell you a little about Jason, a backstory for you, we had originally planned to record this conversation live during the recently concluded 2024 GCSAA Conference and Trade Show in Phoenix. But due to circumstances beyond our control, mainly beyond my control, not Jason's, we had to postpone that. Had a few fits and starts between then and now, but finally had the chance to sit down with Jason, and it's a conversation I think you will really get a lot out of. So who is Jason Sfire? Well, in addition to being a commercial real estate developer in the Chicago area, a dedicated family man, and a committed multi-sport athlete and coach, Jason is also one of the leading advocates for adaptive athletics in the country. Because of a devastating injury he suffered, he now participates in a number of sports, including golf, as an adaptive or seated athlete. And for the purposes of our conversation today, Jason has really become an amazing spokesman for the ways golf courses can make themselves more welcoming to golfers of all abilities and all circumstances. He was a part of an educational presentation during a conference and show on this very topic, and in this episode, he shares stories, the lessons he's learned from his journey as a seated golfer, and a lot of practical tips for golf course operators that can help them as they strive to improve. I really enjoyed getting to know Jason, enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you will too. It's Jason Sfire on episode 61 of the GCSAA Podcast. Very quickly, I want to remind you that you have options when it comes to consuming the GCSAA podcast. There is, of course, the traditional audio version available wherever you get your podcast, but we also have video versions available on GCSAA TV and the association's YouTube channel. So whatever your flavor, we've got it for you in that regard. With that business out of the way, here we go. This is episode 61 of the GCSAA podcast featuring Jason Sfire. Hope you enjoy it. Well, this one has been a long time coming, as Jason well knows. Our guest today, and I will introduce him now, is Jason Sfire. Jason is the president, COO, and owner of the Fidelity Group, a commercial real estate company in the Chicago area. He's been in the real estate development games for, over 30 years. Not only doing new builds, but also retrofits for accessibility, which will transition nicely into the reason that Jason is joining us today, one of a leading advocate for accessible golf. He's a board member, the National Alliance for Accessible Golf, board president with the Great Lakes Adaptive Sports Association, and recently in Phoenix at the GCSAA Conference and Trade Show was a part of a discussion on access and inclusion in the game of golf. So didn't mean to embarrass you there, Jason, with all the plaudits and the resume reading to start things off. But Jason Sfire, welcome to the GCSAA Podcast. Great to have you finally.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you. It's great to be here, man. I'm excited to finally get to land this one and talk a little bit about access and inclusion for the game of golf for adaptive athletes. So I'm super excited.
Absolutely. Without boring the listeners too much, we wanted to do this in Phoenix. We had a live session of the podcast scheduled, and due to unforeseen circumstances, mainly on my part, all on my part, not on your part, weren't able to do it there. We also had another recording schedule scuttled because I lost my voice for about 3 days right in the middle of that. But
which is really important for a podcast.
It is as I've learned, a key skill set to have when it comes to the podcast. So finally, we're able to do it, and we're happy to have Jason on board because there was an emphasis in Phoenix educationally to put a focus on accessibility and inclusion and diversity in the game of golf. This podcast that we were going to record there was going to be part of that, but obviously you were able to speak to a pretty full room there. I was in the room. Yeah, it was a great session. I was in there.
Shocked at the turnout, encouragingly so, because you never know, right? You fly all the way there and you show up to do something, but it just showed me that there's a lot of interest from operators and owners of golf courses for the inclusion and to invite, golfers of all abilities into their courses, which is really what, we're going after. So yeah, it was great. It was an honor to be there.
Yeah, I was encouraged as well when I came in the room and wasn't able to stay there the entire time. But it was the part of the session that I saw was really encouraging. And more and more golf course superintendents are in roles where they can positively impact the accessible nature of their
For
golf
sure.
courses. So I think that was a great sign to see the interest in that, and hopefully we'll get some good listenership here, and uh, share some good tips that you've kind of learned over your journey in adaptive golf. So I want to start off a little bit with your origin story.
Yeah.
You and I have had a chance to chat in various meetings and conversations previously, so I have a rough idea. But I want to kind of just talk about you a little bit to start. Where did you grow up? And
Yeah.
you are a huge sports, a huge athlete in various
Yeah.
sports. We'll discuss all of that, but just where did you grow up, and how did your interest in all kinds of sports begin?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Lake Zurich, Illinois, which is a northwest suburb about 40 miles outside of Chicago. Actually, still live a mile from there. So moved a little bit around, but that's been home for a long time. And it was a really young age. And I come from a family athlete. So I come from a divorced family. So I had four parents, and all of my parents were athletes, right? So we were just kind of raised in sports. My dad coached baseball and coached football, and then my stepfather was actually a professional tennis player at one point in time, a
Oh,
competitive professional tennis player, and then it was a teaching professional. So we grew up playing tennis from a really young age. My dad, my biological father, I'll say that because it'll be a little more clear, was
yeah.
more into football and baseball. So I grew up at a young age playing football and tennis, and then picked up wrestling. Yeah, and so you come from a larger family. I had three brothers, and I still have three brothers, and two sisters, and we were just all athletes. And I was just blessed to be kind of introduced to sports at a really young age. And because back then, right, when I'm growing up 20, 30 years ago, you didn't specialize in one sport. You played everything.
Right.
So I just got to play a whole bunch of sports, and then I didn't start golfing. Which is interesting until later in life, because that's more of a social sport. But then along with my tennis, kind of carried golf and tennis through my younger adult years, until I went ahead then, and after my injury, then I kind of stuck with those two sports as I became more of an adaptive athlete.
Do you find that you miss any one of the sports that you used to participate in that maybe you don't now? I
Yeah,
know how active we were talking beforehand. You
yeah.
you already got some pickleball in today, and
Yeah. No, it's
um,
it's it's actually a great question, Scott, because what I thought this is a cool story, and this will help maybe the listeners to understand, kind of what my heart and passion is, how I've gotten into doing what I'm doing now as an advocate for adaptive athletes and as an adaptive athlete coach and as an adaptive athlete. I started thinking that, like football, because after high school, played college football for a year and college tennis. And then I kind of, left and went into the work field, and then I had my injury happened early. But I was still able to play sports, and I was still really active. And I started coaching football right out of college. So I was coaching able-bodied football I've been coaching football, able-bodied football, all the way up until I became partially disabled, fully disabled, partially paralyzed in 2017. I was still coaching able-bodied football. And I actually thought that I was never going to be able to coach football again due to my injury. So that would have been the one sport that I would have really missed if that had never been a possibility until just recently. 2 years ago, the NFL with Bob Woodruff Foundation started a wheelchair football league in partnership with the NFL. And I was actually asked to be the head coach of the wheelchair Chicago Bears. So I got to get back into football. So to answer your question, kind of long roundabout way, I actually got to experience that I was like heartbroken. I mean, more than heartbroken. It was almost devastating in my life to think that I would never be able to coach again, especially the game of football after coaching for so long. But
yeah.
that's not the case, right? Now I'm coaching, and actually April 25th, I'll be going to the NFL draft, taking the Army veteran Pro Bowl team and coaching the Army Pro Bowl veteran team against the Marine and Navy Pro Bowl team.
Very cool.
So I'm still getting to do it, but that would have been the one sport that I would have missed if I didn't get to participate anymore in any level.
Yeah, that's super cool. And it will work in great with a question that's not that I didn't prep you on that I threw in at the end as I was getting ready this morning to do
Brilliant.
this, and it was about your hometown Bears. So we'll save that for later. And it was
Okay,
about the draft too, and you're going to be there, so that
perfect.
works out.
I'm going to be there. Yeah, it's
We're
cool.
on
Yeah,
the we're on the same wavelength when it comes to that stuff. I don't want to belabor this too much, but I'll just let you tell the story of your injury.
yeah.
What occurred again. You were a very, very active, able-bodied athlete. Just briefly walk us through your injury and what happened, just to kind of set the stage for what we'll talk about going forward.
Yeah, and I'll give you permission, Scott. If I carry this on too long, you can steer me in a different direction because this is
Okay.
a hard one. This is a hard one to say short
Sure.
because it was so impactful in mine and my family's life. So as I had said previously, 25 years ago, I had an accident and I fell 30 to 35 feet onto a concrete driveway. And I got to tell this part to get to how I became disabled because it's a journey.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I actually fell and it broke my back in 9 places, shattered my left hip, shattered both my wrists, right collarbone came out of my skin, knocked out 10 teeth, broke my orbital jawbone, came through the roof of my mouth. I mean,
Wow.
it was a bad accident. If I, by the grace of God, I lived. I mean, every doctor that I saw was like, they were shocked that I was alive. I went on a series of, I had some immediate surgeries, right? Kind of trauma-based surgeries immediately after the accident. And then I kind of went on this journey, my family and I, of having these routine, what felt like routine, because they were happening every year. I went 20 years without having a surgery. I mean, I was having 1 to 2 surgeries every year
Wow.
on different parts of my body just to keep things, like new parts,
Yeah.
almost like a car or a mechanical device over 20 years. Fast forward a little bit, I was still, so for the listeners and everybody to understand, I was still able-bodied. I was still very functioning at a high level, walking completely normally, could still jog, wasn't running, but living a really active life. And then in 2013, having one of those routine kind of maintenance back surgeries would have been my 9th back surgery in 2013. And unfortunately, tragically, acquired MRSA in the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, which is MRSA, which is a flesh-eating bacteria.
Yeah.
That if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's antibiotic resistant, or so like they don't, most antibiotics don't work on them. Um, Ended up from 2013 to 2017 having to have 20 open spine surgeries, went into kidney failure and septic twice, ended
Wow.
up with sepsis, ended up having 1,300 doses of different IV antibiotics because there was 1 or 2 that did work over that kind of 4 to 5 year period. Met a doctor finally in 2017 that said, I can, and this is a real simple statement. He said, I can heal you, I can fix you, but you're never going to be the same. And my wife and I, it's kind of like we thought like, well, what choice do we have, right? I mean, if I
Yeah.
don't do this, I'm almost died twice. I'm gonna probably die. I'm gonna succumb to this at some point. And we said, whatever. So I had to have 5 surgeries by a great doctor down at Northwestern in the city of Chicago over like a 2 month period. He rebuilt my whole spine again. This was like, I'm well over 25 back surgeries at this point. But he healed me, put me back together, went to, infectious disease docs who ended up getting the infection to finally go into kind of remission, mostly because we got most of the infection out of me that was in my
Yeah.
bones and in my tissue. But from that, what he meant by you're never going to be the same is it was going to be a life of, disability. And at the point in time, they thought I was going to be completely paralyzed from the belly button down. And through the help of a lot of really great therapy practitioners and a lot of hard work, I've beaten those odds. I can still take about 5 to 6 steps with a set of crutches, forearm
Uh-huh.
crutches. But I use a wheelchair daily and I live a really awesome life and I'm really happy. And I'm playing a lot of sports again and being really active and father of 4 and a grandfather now and just
Wow.
blessed beyond belief, man. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's a story, and I have a little familiarity with MRSA. I had a family member who had a relatively minor, obviously compared to your story, um, uh, case of it in a injured finger that
Mm.
they had, and picked it up as the finger was getting set in a hospital and whatnot, and so you know certainly serious, very serious. I can't imagine in your case, the scale of what you were
Yeah.
dealing with is many times what this family member was going
But
through. But
anytime someone acquires MRSA, it should be, 911, like, because
yeah,
it's serious, man. It is like not 911, call the ambulance, just like a 911 emergency, get this
yes,
taken care of.
yeah,
Because it can turn it really quick into a bone and then a blood infection. And then, people don't live through blood infections very
yeah,
often. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That was
it's
that was our experience as well. You can definitely see when a doctor's and nurses' faces change when certain things
little
happen.
panic. Yep. Yep,
And
for
that
sure.
was one of them. So you go through all of this. You obviously have an upbringing, and your life up to that point was unbelievably active, very involved in sports and athletics, and then obviously a relatively demanding job, I'm assuming,
Mhm.
in real estate development. From once all this was behind you and you were kind of processing your new reality, how long did that take for you to come to terms with what that was and what that was going to mean for you and your family moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question because you go on this 4-year journey of the infection, right? And I would say there was a point in time during that infection when I was, and you hear now it's really cool. Like you hear these professional golfers and some of this full swing talking about mental health issues, which are really
Right.
important. Because I was there, like mine for different reasons, these guys for some trauma reasons and then other reasons. But I, I mean, I was at a really depressed state. And I was really at a point where I was just like, I'm done fighting. My poor wife. I mean, my wife became a triage nurse. One day they said, listen, you now have to change IVs and do all this. So we were, and our kids were growing up at the point in time and seeing their dad really struggling. It was hard. Um, thank God for my faith, and our church family was incredible.
Yeah.
Through this process really helped me to stay focused on what was important, where my hope should be. So it took a little bit of time. It was in the middle of the infection that I finally made the decision that I'm not done here. Like there's something I've got to do with this story, because you don't have, at that point it was 50, 45 to maybe 50. Now I'm over 50 surgeries, but at that you don't go through something like that and not make a difference if you have an opportunity. So I'll fast forward a little bit. And what had happened is after I had gotten kind of the diagnosis that you're going to be disabled, and I had done all the recovery and like, okay, I can still walk a little bit. Maybe TMI, but I'm not catheterized fully. Like I still can act as a really normal human being, which is a blessing. I had said, all right, I got to do something with this now, but I can't just, like, you don't create your own platform, right? You don't just say one day, I'm going to go do something with this. And next thing you know, you're doing podcasts, right? That doesn't
Right.
happen.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, let's do what we know to do. And what I knew to do was athletics. I was a really good athlete. I even loved coaching more. Like I love being an athlete, but I really love coaching. I love seeing a difference in people and being that activator, being the
Yeah.
one that can take a kid or an adult and activate something in them that kind of pushes them to greatness. Um, so after that, I had decided, all right, I'm going to get into sports. And what sports did I play? Well, I was a football player. Well, football wasn't around yet. Now it is, which is cool.
Right.
But I was a tennis player, and I'm like, I know there's wheelchair tennis. Well, I didn't know anything about it. Cool story is I'd taken my boys to Midtown because they wanted to play tennis. So I'm taking them and they're getting lessons in Midtown Athletic Club in Chicago. It's one of the larger athletic clubs. And the guy that they go to do their first lesson with was a former coach that I played against his athletes at a rival high school.
Oh, wow.
And that's like, it was an appointment. I mean, it was a God thing. I walk in and he looks and he goes, Sfire. He goes, are you Jason Sfire? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, I remember you when you played high school tennis, number one doubles, and you kicked my guys' butts. He said, why haven't you thought about wheelchair tennis? Well, like 2 weeks before I'm thinking about wheelchair tennis, now a guy's telling me, he's like, I can work with you. So I literally started playing wheelchair tennis in my daily chair because I didn't even know anything that there was athletic chairs or sports
Yeah.
chairs or tennis wheelchairs. So got into it, was really cool. And I'm like, okay, now I got to find people that, because you played at Midtown Athletic Club. I mean, I was one of the first athletes ever to play out of Midtown Athletic Club Palatine,
Oh, wow.
wheelchair athletes. So now I'm like, all right, now I got to go find people that can help me understand how to do life as an adaptive athlete. So then so I'm going through, Google, because that's what we all do now, right? So
Right.
I'm going through Google and I find Great Lakes Adaptive Sports, and this ties in with me being the board president, as you announced earlier.
Mhm.
How, again, this is just a really cool God story. How this happens is I find Great Lakes Adaptive Sports, I see they have tennis. I call the lady that answers the phone, and I'm telling her my story, and I'm like, hey, this, newly disabled. I'm an adaptive athlete. I think I want to play tennis. I don't know much about it. I live in Barrington. I used to coach football, active. And she goes, is your name Jason Sfire? And I'm like, yeah. It turns out my last year of coaching able-bodied football in high school, I was a special teams coordinator for years. That's what I coached special teams. And the kicker, a senior kicker for our team at Carmel Catholic High School in Mundelein, I was the varsity special teams coordinator. His name was Matt Helen, and it was his mom who had answered the phone. I didn't even
Holy
know she
moly.
worked with Glassa. So she invites me out to tennis. I go for the first time, fall in love with it, meeting guys that can help me understand, like, hey, this is how you do this. This is how you move your chair. This is how you take your sport chair and push it with your daily chair. I mean, just really cool life things that make you feel like, all right, now I have community. I have
Yeah.
people that are like me and I see how well they're doing. Now that gives me hope, right? So that's kind of how I found it. And then it's just I just kept stacking blocks on top of each other to become a tennis coach and then pick up golf. And now I'm competitive seated golfer, going to be playing a big tournament here in April down here in Florida. So yeah, I think that answered the question, kind of long answer, but it's a long story.
We'll get back to this episode in a minute, but now some words from Envu, a gold level GCSAA partner committed to working with golf course superintendents to accomplish great things on the course every day. Fairy ring is a turf disease that can appear almost like magic. You can keep fairy ring off your fairways, greens, and elsewhere with effective fungicide solutions from Envu. Options include Densacor, Tartan Stress Guard, and Mirage Stress Guard fungicides, all specifically designed to prevent fairy ring and other problematic turf diseases. Just remember to apply them at the optimal soil temperature. A 5-day average soil temp of 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit measured at a 2-inch depth for cool season turf and 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit in the southern states. And coming soon, you'll have a brand new way to control fairy ring and other diseases with the new Caslon fungicide, powered by the original fluoxystrobin formulation. Caslon is launching soon and will offer control over dozens of turf diseases across your course. So be sure to ask about adding this new option to your program. Envu is also excited to announce that the company will be the exclusive manufacturer sponsor of fungicides, insecticides, herbicides, and nematicides at the 2024 U.S. Senior Open at Newport Country Club. Envu is proud to help superintendents ensure the greens, tees, and fairways are at peak health and playability for the biggest events in the game. Contact your Envu representative or go to us.envu.com/golf to learn more about agronomic solutions that can help protect your turf and keep it healthy when it matters most. Remember to always read and follow label instructions and that not all products are registered for use in all states. Once again, our thanks to everyone at Envu for their support of the podcast. And now, let's get back to this episode. Had you played much golf prior to your injury?
Yeah, so after college, high school, and after the short stint in college, I go into the business world, and what do business people do? They golf,
Yep.
right? So, my dad and I worked with my dad for the last 35 years. I now run the business. Dad's retired, but, we would entertain clients. Bankers would take us out. So I was actually becoming a very good golfer. But the hardest part for me was if you remember 25 years ago. So when I was 25 years old, I had this accident there were certain times where I just couldn't golf. So I would be like a pocket golfer where like I golf for these little pockets.
Yeah.
And I was really good. My handicap was getting really low. I was becoming competitive. I was enjoying it. And then so I hadn't golfed in 10 years prior to 18 months ago. Yeah.
Wow. Well, what brought you back? Was it still the business side, or
No.
did your
Well,
experience in tennis just start manifesting itself with did your mind start going, okay, now what else can I do?
yeah, a little bit of that, but it was more of like a specific thing is my dad golfs, all of my friends, like everybody, I don't know many people that don't say they golf, whether they really golf or not, that's yet to be determined, but they like to golf, right? So it was a little bit of that social draw. My buddies were golfing and I'd be go sit in the golf cart and have a cigar while they all golfed. And I'm like, again, I didn't know that there was this thing as seated golf and there were all these awesome, solar riders and
Yeah.
verticats and all these different devices. But what really happened is when I was competing in tennis, it was really hard. Like, because I had a little bit of a career of playing open level wheelchair tennis, which is kind of the professional ranks in the International Tennis Federation, the ITF. And it's become a young man's game because the NCAA has decided that they're giving Division One, which is amazing. I'm super stoked for these young men and women. They're giving Division One scholarships for wheelchair tennis athletes now. So there's a lot of younger wheelchair athletes coming into the mix. And so I started golfing because I went 2 years ago, I went to play the Houston Open in Houston. My doubles partner and I, he's older than me, he's almost 60, and I'm going to be 50. And we ended up playing these two kids that go to the University of Alabama. I call them kids because they're younger than my
Yeah.
oldest child.
Okay.
Um, and it was like 105-degree heat. And we had played I mean, we were in the match for a little bit, and then we're both like, we can't do this anymore. So it just became a young man's game to compete, and I'm super competitive. So I started golfing, and then I started scoring in the low, mid 80s, and I'm like, that's pretty good. I mean, I've only been doing this a little while. If I find a coach that actually knows how to help coach me, I think I can shave a few more strokes. If I learn how to use the adaptive device that I have, I think I can shave a few more strokes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I just started golfing and I'm falling in love with it because it's so much easier on my body.
Yeah.
Um, and then you shoot a couple rounds in the 70s, and then it's like you're in no matter what it takes, you're fully
Right.
in. And then opportunities come because your handicap goes low and people see that, and then they offer you the opportunity to compete. And so again, I made that statement early on that like if you want to do something with the story, what God's given you, then you have to go ahead and push it forward. So
Right.
do I want to compete in golf forever? No, probably not. But to be able to say that I've done it really gains a lot of credit with other seated golfers or adaptive golfers because I know what they're experiencing. So that's kind of why I'm pushing it forward now and going for it from the competitive side at least.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of turn the conversation a little bit to some of your experiences on the golf course. And this is where I think
Sure.
hopefully the superintendent listeners, golf operator listeners can kind of learn something from, hopefully learn some stuff from your experiences. What do you recall from your first attempt to play as an adaptive golfer? What was that experience for
Yeah.
you like? I mean, what obstacles did you run into? And was there any sort of epiphany, I guess, after you walked away going, man, they could sure make this a lot easier for me and others who have challenges like the ones that I have to deal with.
Yeah, and that's an awesome question, and I think that that's probably the most important question that we're talking about. If our goal is right, especially with GCSAA's background of what you all do
Sure.
for your listenership is the most. And I have a really unique experience of how I was welcomed, right? Because what happens most of the time in all adaptive sports is how you see, like how do we see people? How do we see people as an adaptive athlete? Do you see Jason, the guy that comes up in the wheelchair? Do you see Jason, the guy with the cart that rolls on your course? Or do you just see Jason as a regular dude that wants to just play some golf and have some fun? So I was really lucky that the first course I ever played on actually was my home course in North Barrington. We were members of Biltmore Country Club, social members. And once I started kind of down this journey, I'm like, you know what? I would love to be able to golf right in my backyard if I could. So my first experience was brought. So I could maybe, Scott, what I'll do is I'll give you the high point and I'll give you a low point. How's that?
Sure.
And they're two
Yeah.
different stories. And the first one is my high point, and that's how I was welcomed at Biltmore Country Club by the staff there. Wyatt Bird, who's one of your members, is our groundskeeper and superintendent. He's an incredible guy, and he has a great heart towards this what we're talking about. Because when he saw me first, he saw me as a person and as a member, and just said, "How can we help you? Because you know more about this than we do, right?" So
Right.
that's a great first question: is how can we help you, right? Not what are you going to do to my golf course? How can I help you? And then we can partner, right? Because immediately he puts me in a position where I feel welcome and I go, this is somebody that cares and this is somebody I can partner with. So that's kind of the engagement language that we work with when it comes to adaptive athletes. So my first experience was awesome with Wyatt and the gang, but we had to work through a lot of obstacles. I mean, figuring out simple things like they want members to use the facilities that are on the golf course. But if the facilities that are on the golf course at the halfway house are not accessible, I can't use them, right?
Right.
So the first couple rounds, I didn't even think about it. And I'm like, okay, now I'm on hole 15 and I really need to use the restroom. And what do we do? So the course, I mean, literally, they were like, we're going to build a ramp in. And they literally the next week tore things up and put a ramp in for one member.
Wow.
So to me, it's not about the cost. It's not about the impact. It's about the people. And when you have a mindset like that as an owner and operator, to say it's about the people and it's about seeing people for who they are and what they have to bring to the world instead of what the impact is,
Yeah.
that changes it a lot. So since then, we've made a bunch of changes. They've made a bunch of changes to the club. They allow me now. They store my cart there, which is amazing because I'm one of the only golfers in the area that have a cart. And we're going to put my cart on Solo Rider's website. So if there's any other seated golfers in the area that want to be able to try seated golf or use a cart, they can come to Biltmore. They'll allow them to come and use my cart on our course, which
Wow.
is really cool. They allow me to store my scooter there, which is awesome. So literally, I pull up in the parking lot, I wave, they bring my scooter out to my car, I roll my scooter down to my locker. I mean, so it's a different experience than what most golfers get and what
Sure.
I've experienced outside of my home course. But I just had to give them a shout out because they've
Yeah.
gone over and above to make it the most enjoyable experience it can for me.
Yeah.
Um, some of the not so great experiences I've had. Um, I had a bunch of friends in from out of town who are really good golfers, a couple of them scratch plus golfers. And I want to take them to one of the best golf courses that we have in the Midwest. I'm like, I just want to do this. I'd like to play it, right? Personally, selfishly, but I
Sure.
also want to bring my buddies to a great golf course. So we drive about an hour and 20 minutes north. Um, and when I filled out the thing online, I had put seated golfer, solo rider golf cart. Put the link in there. Do the research if you want.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call you and tell you, and ask permission. I'm going to fill it out like everybody else does. I'm going to put all they give you a reason, a spot to put notes. I'm going to put the notes in there. I'm thinking we're good. Morning of, haven't heard anything. I got six guys. Six guys. We got two threesomes going off at 7:14 and 7:26 or whatever it is. Going to play a little fun game, probably some skins or something.
Yeah.
We show up at the golf course, unload the cart, drive to the practice green. My buddies go in and pay because I can't drive my cart in the clubhouse, right? But they go in and pay. They don't say anything. We go to the first tee, and out comes somebody and says, what is that? What are you doing on the tee box? And I'm like, it's a solo rider golf cart. It's approved by, a lot of golf carts, courses.
Yeah.
Actually, it's approved by one of I asked the gentleman, I actually said, give me your top three golf courses in the country if you could golf. And he names Pebble Beach in that top three, right? And, Pebble Beach, Spyglass, all those courses. Well, I golfed there. Actually, there's a picture right behind me. I don't know if you can see it to
Oh, yeah.
this shoulder. Yeah, it's me, and it's hard to see, but that's me in one of Pebble Beach's green Solar Rider golf carts.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have them. They have them there at all of their courses for seated golfers to play. So he names Pebble Beach. I said, well, I've golfed there in one of these carts in a sideways rain, standing water on the golf course. And if the Pebble Beach groundskeeper and superintendent feels that it's okay, I'm sure I'm fine here on your golf course. No, it's not safe. It's not
Wow.
safe. It's not safe for who? I said, the golf cart's safe. It's, blah, blah, blah. We go into a long conversation. I said, can I see your manager, speak to your manager? Manager's not here. Why are you not going to let me on your course? It's not safe. I said, is it not safe for your golf course or not safe for me? I said, because if it's not safe for your golf course, then you probably need to think about how you approach people. I said, it would be different if you said, hey, there's some wet spots. We really would like you to stay out of them. If it'd be okay, maybe you could go 90-degree rule, car path only to your, because it wasn't car path only for everyone else, which was the
Right.
crazy thing.
Right. Right.
So I won't name the golf course, but that experience was awful. And here's the crazy part. Like, I don't share this often, and I'm pretty durable around this stuff at this point in my life when it comes to, but those types of things for a disabled person and adaptive athlete, you don't understand how hard we try and how much
Right.
we fight to just kind of live through life and just try and be normal.
Yeah.
And now you're just trying to go golf and do something that we all love to do as a social activity. And now you're actually being almost like demeaned because the way I do life isn't good
Yeah.
enough. And he couldn't even give me an answer what wasn't safe about it. So I literally just took my car back, and I actually was weeping in my car as all my
Oh,
friends are freaking out because I just couldn't take it anymore. I had tried all of my skills to engage in conversation about this thing's safe and how do why are we doing this? And I just said, I'm a really good negotiator. It's what I do for a living. And I said, I failed. And I just finally said, you know what? It's just sad that this is how you see people and
yeah.
that you don't care about every golfer. You just care about certain golfers. And that's a sad day for the work, for golf, for all sports, when we can't try and find a way to navigate through every situation. Because I wasn't going to do any damage to that golf course. I know.
Was that a catalyst at all for you to kind of get involved and say, I can make a difference. I can change. I might not have been able to change his mind, but I can change others' mind for the benefit of people that are going through what I'm going through. Did you look back on that at that moment as something that kind of got you into service with the Great Lakes Group and the National Alliance and all of the work you've done in those areas?
It's 100% true because the minute that happened, as I had said, I was kind of living in my bubble that what had happened at Biltmore was the way that I was going to be greeted everywhere. And
Right.
again, I didn't, I don't have context. I don't know other seated golfers at this point in time, a year and a half ago. I do now. But yeah, that's when I looked up the Alliance, and I said, I had actually called the gentleman who sold me my Solar Rider golf cart. And I had said, where are there places that I can get involved? I said, because I'm tired. I'm not going to let this happen to another person because that's just my coach's heart, right? Is
Yeah.
like I had said, I'm not about, I'm not really great at pushing Jason's agenda forward. That's not what's important to me, thankfully. Um, I want to go ahead and help other people. So I got engaged with the Alliance. Through the Alliance, I got engaged with, GCSAA with you, had an opportunity to speak down there in Arizona. Have another couple opportunities coming up where I get to speak and talk, and the main focus of my conversation isn't about, it has a lot less to do with golf and has a lot to do with how we see people.
Yeah.
And, because it's important in wherever you are in life is how do you see a person with disability? Do you see the wheelchair? Do you see them? Right? Because I just get around differently, but I'm just a regular person,
Right.
So yeah, that was really kind of a catalyst and activator for me to say, I got to do something with this. And I don't know what it means, but we're going to take it for a ride and see where it goes, and see what happens.
I'm curious. Have you followed up with that course? Have they changed their ways, or do you still hear stories that maybe they're one of the bad apples out there?
Yeah, no, it was actually it was awesome because when I was in Arizona, they were there and I was actually able to have a conversation with someone. And I just think it was a bad day for them.
Yeah,
So, but because of that, right? And that's the thing is, you know, everything happens for a reason, right? And I really truly believe that. I believe that, our whole life's already planned out and everything happens in that exact moment for a reason. So for that, for me, was hopefully an eye opener for them because they actually came and sought me out at the conference in Arizona
yeah.
because they had seen that I was going to be there. They didn't know that I was the guy, I don't think, right? But they had known that there was going to be some people there talking about access and inclusion in the game of golf. So yeah, I think I'm hoping that has changed, and I'm also hoping because there's becoming a presence of there's not many seated golfers in Illinois. There's one or two of us. There's a lot of adaptive golfers, a lot of one-arm golfers, a lot of
Right.
one leg or prosthetic limb golfers.
Sure.
Um, but there's never really been a ton of organization, and I think some of that organization starting to come. The USGA is jumping on board with some competitions. Us at the Alliance
Yeah.
are being able to bring some education forward. So I'm excited. I think that it feels like I got in at the right time, and I can
Yeah.
really be a service to help advance this forward.
It's cool. You mentioned the USGA. The U.S. Adaptive Open will actually be played here in the lovely state of
Oh,
Kansas
yeah,
later this summer at Sand Creek Station out in Newton, which is a great facility. And I like the angle. One of the things that we do, and that I do in my job here, is I love success stories, and not just success stories, but the story that you told of the club that was not welcoming. There's lessons to be had from that. And that's kind of the way that we approach, what we do in the magazine, what we do with various other education and communication vehicles here is let people tell their stories like that. I think those are so valuable for, superintendents or operators who are listening to hear the great story that you had at Biltmore and go, well, heck, we could do that.
yeah,
Um, but conversely, hearing the story of things that didn't go so great for you and go, wow, we should really not do that.
yeah.
That doesn't seem like a great way to run a business or run a country club or run a golf course. So I think those are super valuable. I want to pivot just a little bit, and you probably took this approach when you were in Phoenix and talking with our members when you were on the panel, but I want you to kind of think about maybe some key takeaways that you would like superintendents who are listening, golf course operators and owners who are listening. If someone's just getting curious about this topic and they hear you and I speaking, what do you think are important takeaways for them to get headed in the right direction to make sure that they have a welcoming golf facility for anyone who is interested in playing the game?
Yeah, that's it. And I love that because this whole conversation, right, is going to be a lot to digest. And I get that. But if we can leave, your membership or anybody who listens to this with just a few key things to start to how to see golfers of all abilities, right? Because you don't have to be disabled to need special assistance or have some sort of handicap flag or access
Right.
flag on your cart. What I'd love is kind of two things. The first thing I spoke about is kind of that how do we see people? And when you see a person with disability, what's going to be your first question, right? Start thinking about that first question now, because the first question definitely shouldn't be is what happened to you, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
the first question shouldn't be what do you need to be able to golf here, right? Those types of things. And then the second thing is really getting educated. I think that illiteracy is the biggest issue that surrounds, whether it's the golf course industry, whether it's formerly the tennis industry and tennis clubs all over the place. It's just not understanding what even adaptive golf is. I mean, I can't tell you how many courses, Scott, that I go to, even still today, even in the state of Florida or wherever, that have no idea that there is actually such a thing as adaptive or seated golf.
Right.
And that's crazy. So I would just really encourage, anybody that listens to this, if there's any sort of, you know, poking or prodding anywhere in your body, a tickle, a spidey sense, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
to get educated, and that's where the National Alliance of Accessible Golf, we have a whole education platform lined out for
Right.
what does adaptive golf look like, whether it's seated, one arm, short stature, blind, any of those different types. It's not just seated golf because Jason's a seated golfer. That's just one, way to golf, but it's get educated, and it's ask curious questions. Once you engage, so what I talk about all the time, and this is with whether I'm any sport I'm coaching, and when I do coaching clinics for different coaches, is I tell them that you have to connect before you can correct. So you have to be able to connect with an athlete, right? And before you can correct. Well, this is a little different, right? Because we're not going to correct, but you have to be able to connect before you or engage, right?
Sure.
Before
Yeah.
you can direct or before you can. So just engage. A lot of what I've found is a lot of people are, they either feel like the conversation will be easier just not to have with a person with disability, right? Or
Right.
they're afraid,
Absolutely.
maybe they're just, it's fear. And that's the other piece is it's just fear that they're going to say the wrong thing. Well, you know what? I'd rather you, Scott, or anyone just come up to me and try rather than just
Sure.
not engage in a conversation at all. Or even just walk up, and just, so a disarming way to approach someone with a disability is just say, you know what? I've never done this as an operator or as a course, employee. I've never done this. I've never engaged with someone with a disability. So, but I really would like to partner with you in this. So, what can we do together to make this a better situation for you? Just ask those questions, and then just engage. So, I would just encourage any of them, don't start thinking about how we can remodel our course. That's the wrong place to start.
Right.
What is get a hold of the Alliance, get a hold of someone like me, get a hold of Glassa, get a hold of these. And there's a bunch of great organizations. I know there's some in Kansas City, there's Arizona, great organizations that do great education and have a ton of adaptive sports that can educate you on where to go if you have an interest in making your
Sure.
course more accessible for the game of golf.
Yeah, you take a great success story at Biltmore. I mean, just that's
Yeah.
how they approached it sounds like how that's a great roadmap for other superintendents, operators, facilities to take and just, what can we do to work with you so you
Yep.
get to enjoy the game here as much as the other members get to
Yep.
enjoy the game there. And I would be remiss if I didn't. Obviously, one of the reasons that you got connected with GCSAA was the fact that our Director of Government Affairs, Hava McKeel,
Yep.
serves on the board of directors for the
She does.
National Alliance. So it's an important issue for the association as a whole. So superintendents can certainly turn to GCSAA to get some basic information. I will throw links to all of these organizations in the show notes of this episode. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever, you can even look in the show notes for on YouTube, the video versions as well. You'll find that kind of information, at least get you started down that road. And hopefully we can start adding more and more
Awesome.
courses that think like Biltmore. I've got a little final four for you that I want to get to, and I'll bring it full circle to
Love
our
it.
conversation about the Bears at that. Real quickly though, I mean, you were talking about your coaching. Are you doing any seated golf coaching at this point? Have you
Yeah.
found any others that you're helping along the way?
So not formally, right? Yeah, so not formally because we're actually trying to develop, that's what the Alliance and I'm trying to work with some others is actually develop a training format to actually certify coaches
Yeah,
when it comes to seated golf or any sort of adaptive golf. So, but I am actually working with a few guys down here in Florida that are interested. Just because I have a cart, people come up to me. I'm the only golfer down here and the only golfer back at Biltmore. So obviously I'm not hard to find, but people see other members see that I'm out there on the course and then they know somebody or they have a family member and they approach me. And so, yeah, there's actually a couple men that I worked with one gentleman. He's already gone back to his home, but I'm working with another gentleman down here, getting in my cart, taking some swings, letting him use my clubs. And so, yeah, nothing formal, but I am, but I'd love to. I'd actually love to develop some sort of
yeah,
program that I could put something out there where people then could find me in the
yeah.
Midwest area or in Florida when I'm down here in the winter and actually formally coach because it would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to go about it, and I just your story is super cool as someone who faced just great adversity, but has been able to turn that into something where you've got you're being driven, you're helping others, you're opening doors for, and that's super important, and just cool story all around. So let's have just a couple 30 seconds of fun here and do our final four, which most episodes I throw these at our guests and sometimes I forget, but this one I did not.
Yeah.
So three golf questions first. What's your favorite memory of playing the game of golf? And it could be from your seated golf days. It can be from your
Sure.
able-bodied golf days.
It's definitely that opportunity that I had to play at Pebble Beach and Spyglass. It was just, I mean, it's picturesque and it's iconic. And I got to do it with some really close friends. So that's the greatest memory thus far. I got a lot of great memories with my dad on the golf course
Sure.
as he ages, but that's like, I mean, that's pretty cool to be able to go to Pebble and Spyglass. So
The weather, it sounds like you played it in Pebble. That's heck, I'm not sure I would have
for
tackled that.
two
Maybe
hours,
for Pebble I would have, but
yeah, for 2 hours, and then it was sunny the rest of the weekend. So yeah,
yeah. Well, that's good. It's a beautiful place. I've been on it many times. I have
yeah.
never swung a club in anger on it, but that's definitely on the bucket list. So speaking of bucket list, are
Yeah.
there any other golf courses that you would just love to be able to tackle?
I'd love to be able to play TPC Sawgrass after watching the players. That would be amazing. But I'd love to be able to play internationally, in Scotland or,
Sure.
in the UK, anywhere of those, links. I love link style golf. That's what Sand Creek Station, where
Yeah.
the US Adaptive Open is a link style course. So hopefully May 7th I qualify so I can play some link style golf in July.
Yeah.
But anywhere over in the UK would be, incredible for me. Scotland, I had some buddies this last summer that went to Scotland and just the stories. So because
Okay.
that's where seated golf started. It,
Really?
yeah, yeah. The That's where seated golf started. Was the first paramobile device was developed in the UK. So there's kind of a cool for me. I know it'd be really welcomed everywhere.
Yeah.
So that'd be pretty cool too to go there.
Birthplace of the game, obviously. Do you have any sort of dream foursome people that you'd love to get out and play around a golf with, or could be a threesome, could be a fivesome.
Yeah,
We'll be flexible.
I'd love to go 5 people. Be my
Sure.
son John, because he's an avid golfer. My son-in-law Logan, my dad while he's still here.
Right.
So that's four, and then probably it's definitely a pro. I'm just trying to decide right now. Probably JT.
Okay.
Yeah. If I could golf with JT, that'd be pretty amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody would say Tiger, but this current fleet of young guy golfers, I'm a JT fan.
Yeah.
So we got to see him get
Pretty
back in
amazing. He showed really well on that full swing. You mentioned that earlier. I'm actually
Yeah,
in the midst of finishing
yeah,
the
yeah,
second season, and so he shows pretty well. He be that whole crew with
yeah.
Ricky and
Ricky and
Jordan
Jordan.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
so
they
cool. Yeah,
seems like it'll be fun.
JT with my family members at Panther National, his new golf course.
Well,
So
that would be great. Yeah, that just
yeah,
opened up. We just did a
yeah,
feature on that.
yeah.
You did say one of the Jonas Brothers, which during one of the podcasts I recorded down there in Phoenix with Amy Bockersteady.
I remember. I heard
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
she
no, I'm
wanted
not.
to.
My kids, maybe the Jonas Brothers.
Yeah, that's a little beyond
Yeah,
my age group. And
yeah.
so, and the final one, I'll roll back to football and the Bears. You mentioned it. Are you in or out on the QB situation there with Chicago, the Justin Fields trade and zeroing in on Caleb Williams? The draft is coming up. You said you're heading there, and I guess that's
Yeah,
in mid-April or near the end of April in Detroit.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
what are your
So
thoughts on the Bears situation?
I was okay if they would have kept Justin Fields because I get that he's not a great pocket passer yet, but
Yeah,
we haven't given him much to pass to. Last year we
sure.
did, right? But we haven't protected him. And being a longtime football coach, it starts up front. If you don't protect your quarterback, you can't
Yep.
ever see what he's going to do. So I'm a little in between. I'm After that, I'm a little confused. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Caleb Williams guy because it's another running quarterback, another athletic running quarterback. So I was kind of like, we already had one of those. I don't know why we'd get another one. So I don't know. They're going to have to take a quarterback now. So I got to be in on it. I
Yep.
just don't know who. You know what I mean? I just don't know who. So
Yeah, they painted themselves in a corner a little bit by making that deal. I was slightly in the camp that they should trade back a little bit, land a Marvin Harrison, or get some draft capital, build up your line, things like that. So of course we all feel like we're experts here in Kansas City after the last couple of years.
Well, you should be. I mean, you can tout that horn a little bit. I actually was like, just keep Justin Fields for one more year on his end of his rookie deal and see what happens. Let them both compete. I don't know, take a quarterback, whatever. Right? So whatever. I got to be in now. So I'm hoping it works out.
Well, you're gonna have a front row seat to it while you're in.
It'll be cool to be there
in Detroit. That'll be super cool. We had it here last year and made it down for some of the fan experience. Then we weren't actually there for the draft, but it was kind of cool to have it in town. So, awesome. Jason, thank you so much for your time and your patience, as we described earlier. I really appreciate it. I'm super happy we were finally able to connect and have this conversation. I hope that what we talked about and some of your stories will be an inspiration to superintendents who are listening to at least take a few minutes to sit back and look at their operations and see how can we make what we do at my golf facility welcoming to golfers of all skill levels of all abilities. And I imagine that will happen, and hopefully again everyone take a look at the show notes of this episode. We'll have some further resources there, and I'm sure we'll see Jason again, hopefully at future shows as well. So, Jason Sfire, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Be well.
Well, that's a wrap on yet another episode of the GCSAA Podcast, presented in partnership with Envu. Big thanks to our guest today, Mr. Jason Sfire. Remember, if you want more information about ways you can make your golf facility more welcoming to more golfers, check the show notes of this episode for links to the websites of the National Alliance for Accessible Golf and the Great Lakes Adaptive Sports Association, which Jason currently serves as president. Lots of good stuff in the works for upcoming episodes of the podcast, so stay tuned to your favorite podcast feed for all of that. But until then, we'll say goodbye by thanking our podcast editor, Evan Shapiro, our friends at Envu for their continuing support of the podcast, the GCSAA Board of Directors, and all my colleagues at Association Headquarters in Lawrence, Kansas. And of course, my thanks to each of you for subscribing, downloading, and listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch up again soon on the next episode of the GCSAA Podcast.